Okay, so here we are on the computer. Hopefully I can make it one whole video, but it'll just be super long. But anyway, so we discussed how we declare an array. This is how you give each individual one a value. Okay, there is a shortcut way to doing that, which I'll go over in a couple minutes. But this is the most basic way to initialize each value of the array. Now I could have used a for loop and just entered them in manually. It's up to you. So the length, remember, is a property. So to refer to it, I put the name of the array, whatever array I have, dot length. No parentheses here. It is not a method. Okay, like it says here. So if I want to display the test scores, I have to display one test score at a time, just like I did any other time. I can't just output or print scores. It just doesn't work. So I have to use our regular for loop, and be careful not to hardwire it with the length of the array. We want to actually use scores.length to run it. So this is just your average. I refer to each value of the array as scores and then the bracket I, because the I starts at 0 and goes up to 4 in this case. So if I run this, you'll see the length of the array is 5, and it outputs, the way I said to output it, on a line. So anytime you do something with an array and you're doing something with each element of the array, you need a for loop, because we have to traverse it. We have to go through each element. So the next one I have here is if I want to say add up all the scores. So up at the top, let me just comment that out just so we see one thing at a time. Up at the top here, I initialize my sum at 0, but let me bring it down here so you can see that these are the most basic thing that we do with arrays. So one of them is add up all the values in the array. So when you add up all the values, and we've done this maybe 100 times, but maybe I'm wrong, you have to initialize your sum at 0, and then we add up each element. Now this isn't like someone's typing them in, but it's a similar idea where we take the values stored in the array, each one at a time, and put it in the sum. So if I wanted to then output that to see what it looked like, I would have to then do this array, this for loop again. However, what I can do just to see if it works is just do the average. So notice I have an array of integers, so we're typecasting here just as a reminder. I'm typecasting the sum so that I get an exact, I get a decimal answer instead of just a truncated version of the array of the average. So if I run this and I average all those guys together, hopefully you can check it if you want. The average of all these guys is 82.2. So if you add them all up, divide by 5. Okay, so notice I'm not dividing by 5, I'm dividing by the length, and that's a thing that you should get used to using. Use the scores.length or the name of the array.length to do that, because sometimes, I'm like, oh no, I want to add one more score up here and change this to a 6. Even though I can't change the length of the array during the run of the program, I can change it here, and if I change it to length 6, I'm going to have to change all these spots to 6, which is slightly annoying. Okay, another thing that we do is we do something to every item of the array. Okay, so if I do something to every item of the array, so let's say search. So I'm going to search through the whole array, and anyone that got less than 90 on a test, I'm going to add 5 to it. So this is another thing that we do a lot. Okay, we search an array, and quite often we do a linear search, which means we start at 0 at the first position and we step through it to the end. So if I start at 0 here and go to the length, it's going to search every element of my array, and if you recall, these were the elements, so this one should not change, this one will, and that one will. So these three elements should have 5 added to them because we're curving them, and these two should remain 99 and 100. Okay, so I can't see that here, so if I do want to see the fact that I did that, I would need to take this code again, where I outputted every element of the array, and show it later after I've added all the elements to see if they work. It's slightly annoying, but you'll get used to it. For loops are your best friend when it comes to arrays. Everything needs to be done with a for loop unless you're referring to a single element. So it searched through every element of the array. It looked at 99. It wasn't less than 90. It looked at 53. It was, so it added 5 to it. 77 added 5. 101 didn't, and 81 it did. So that's searching through an array. And searching through an array, you use a for loop with it combined with an if statement, and it allows you to do specific things to individual pieces of an array. And remember, when you output an array, you got to use a for loop right now. There will be other ways we'll do it, but right now, that's what we're doing. Okay, one of the next things that we do is find a maximum, or a minimum for that matter. And this is the basic route to take to finding a max or a min. And min would just be, we'd change this thing from greater than to less than. So the basic idea is you got to start your max value out at something. So you can either start it out at a really low score, a score like -5 that no one is ever going to have, or you can start it out at one of the values. And sometimes most of the time that's the better route to take, because you won't mess up. Okay, so we start a max out at a low value, or at any value that's already in the array. Since I started this scores out at 0, so I'm looking at the 0 position, I'm looking at 99 right now. So if I look at 99, I don't have to make this 0 because I've already looked at 99. I made it the max already. Not that changing this to 0 would change anything in the program. The program would just have to run through this for loop one more time. Trying to save space and all that stuff, it's important to realize that you've already dealt with the 99. You don't have to look at it again and compare 99 to 99. All right, so then it looks through the array. It compares, excuse me, and compares max, sorry Danny, to scores I. And if the score that I'm looking at, so if the next one, which is now 58, is bigger than 99, it's going to come back in here and store it. So we can trace these in class individually, which you will be doing, but that's the idea. So it goes through each element, looks at each one from 1 to 4, and if any one of those is bigger than 99, the current one that's stored in there, it's going to change max to that value. Okay, so it's changing it to the value. So if we run it, did I show it? I don't remember. No, so the maximum one should be 101 when I run it. Okay, so my max, I should have moved this, excuse me, down here. And it should show 101 in that spot. So these are code that you're going to be using. See, there's 101. Now, what we could also do is refer to what person got, the highest score. Not necessarily maybe what person, but what index, because there's really no people here, right? So I'm going to call it max index. So which index, oh well, actually in this case I would start it out at 0. So these two match all the time. So the index that we have is 0 to 4. So if this is the max score, the max index would be at 0. So if this one is the max score, I would change my max index to whatever I was at the time. So in this case, with our 101, it should be 3, I believe. And So I can fix that and just do. So you can refer to both of them. It might be useful in general. This is just a tester, so I'm just showing you that it's going to find it in the right spot when we run this. So the max index, I should have spaced it, but so if you see 0, 1, 2, 3, this is the third spot. So the max index was at 3. So that number showed up in the third index spot. Okay, this next one, we have what's called a finding F. So we want to look through our grades and see if anyone failed. So again, it's a search. We go starting with 0 and we see if we can find anything less than 60. All right, what we have here is something called a flag variable. A flag variable is a variable that just kind of keeps track of if we found it or not. Okay, is there anyone that failed is really all we're going through. So if we do find someone that fails, the found gets changed to true. The position, we're told what position that first person is in, and then we break it. So this is just one thing that we do a lot, and then we use that position, or we use that flag variable later in, say, an if statement that, you know, in this case, we're telling them that someone did fail and in that position. We're not finding every position, we're just finding one. That's a whole different bowl of wax. Is that a thing, bowl of wax? Okay, but this is what we call a flag variable, and it just, you know, it's like raises a flag. Right now the flag's down. As soon as we find a failing grade, we lift the flag up. We're like, hey, we found one, we can stop now, and we stop. So that's what this break is for, to stop running of the program. So what should happen, Consulate. So what should happen is it should tell us the position that it's in. Yeah, okay, I just was making sure I had I got this. Okay, the first failing exam score was found in position 1. So we like to use these positions a lot. So notice the difference between, you know, this is your first position, but 58 is stored in that position. So two different ways to deal with it. Remember, the position is your I, and the 58 is the scores bracket I. So that's a big thing that you have to deal with those. Okay, and then the final thing we are going to talk about is called a parallel array. A parallel array is simply just an array that kind of goes along right away. So Alice goes with the 99. Bob is parallel with the 58. Chris, I forget the rest of the numbers, but I remember Dave got a 101. Okay, so I think this is like 82. So we know if we create parallel arrays of the exact same length as another array, and you know, all the ones in the 0 element are related to each other. So if you can see here, when I output this, oh, I'm not outputting this. Okay, so I'm not outputting this whole thing, but what I am doing is noting whatever this position was. So I'm using it here again. I'm keeping track of this position. I can't take I out of this, okay, because it's declared inside the for loop. If I do declare this outside of the for loop, then I could have used I instead of position, okay, because it broke right there and nothing else happened. So what's going to happen here is it's going to tell us who was at the position. So if I do names, position, we're going to know who's the person that failed. And scores, position, that's his grade. So remember, if I put the name of the array and then the position or the index, it's going to give me the value inside these guys. And this is another way to declare an array if you know all the values from start to finish. You know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 will be the array elements, and it stores them one at a time into that array. So this is an alternative way to enter values into an array. And if I want their position, I use position. If I want their actual values, I put the name of the array and the square brackets and the values. Okay, so it was in position 1. Position 1 was 58. And that parallel array, position 1 was Bob. So these are different things that we do. I hope you filled out all those things, and I hope I answered all those questions. And any questions you have, we'll talk about. Have a good day. Sorry it was so long.